All right, folks, good evening.
Good evening.
Welcome to another dream day in the lockdown.
Yes, yes.
Today's been a bit difficult for me. I'm like trying to stay really positive, but it's
Really? Why?
yeah, I don't know. It's just it's really random. I can't even like put my finger on it and explaining what makes it. I don't know. Some days are just like harder than others. In
Yeah,
fact, I think it's a very appropriate business for today. The ups and downs.
yeah. It's. I don't know. It's cyclical. I mean, when you're stuck in the same space, your mind goes in circles.
Yeah. Well, actually, I wanted to ask you because I mean, you say you live in a studio apartment, right? And so you
Yeah.
basically have this one room. Doesn't it get, if you're just always looking at the same walls, don't you feel like a bit trapped in there?
I will admit that I think most people would. I don't. I don't know. It's something about the way I'm wired. Even, years ago, I would have been very used to spending all day indoors in bed. It's my personality. I think also, I grew up in the countryside and there was nowhere to go, so I stayed inside all day. So the whole experience isn't very foreign to me. With my apartment, I think the saving grace are the high ceilings. Because if it was a low ceiling, I think I would feel very confined and claustrophobic. But the
Yeah.
ceiling is very high, so I can feel like there's a bit of air in the
Uh,
space.
yeah, I asked because when I first moved to Milan, my first apartment was a studio apartment. And when I decided to move out and go live with other people, one of the reasons was that I had kind of gotten tired of just like seeing the same wall. And it was a really nice studio, Uh, the space, it was quite small, but the furniture was nicely put, and so it wasn't bad. But that was one thing that did get to me, and I didn't expect to because I do also enjoy being inside quite a bit. Growing up, I would also spend a lot of time in my room. But yeah, and now even though I have two floors in my house, I really do feel like I have different spaces I can go into. But I don't know. Some days I just feel really trapped.
Yeah, I mean, it's especially now that we need the masks to go outside as well. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's
I
been
mean,
like really difficult for me because I suffer from hay fevers, which is like seasonal
um,
allergies. And so, just yesterday or the day before, I went to the supermarket and I needed the mask. And, so I'm like standing in line and like my eyes are watering, like my nose is running, and I just like can't touch my face. And it
mm,
was just miserable, really.
yeah. I mean, at least we're getting, at least with the statistics, the things are looking up a little bit. So I feel good now that there's light at the end of the tunnel, that we
Yeah.
might be out in May or something, which isn't great, but it's better than
Yeah.
nothing.
No, exactly. One thing actually that's been kind of been on my mind, but I think that's also what's kind of stressing me out is following the news and seeing all the uncertainty that's going on with like the Eurogroup and all the fighting, and then I start seeing people commenting and being super political in a way that I consider, I don't want to use the word ignorant, but people are just so quick to judge and make these big bold statements on the internet. Then I have to remind myself that the people that are being the most vocal, are the ones that I don't know. I guess most people aren't at that
Yeah.
extreme. I don't know, but see, that's like getting to me. So I guess I just have to like stay away, and there's nothing I can do.
Yeah. There
So,
isn't anything you can do.
yeah. So anyway, Marco, welcome. Welcome to our focus. I remember you from the other business that I think I did last week with Michelle. So it's
Yeah.
nice to see you again. We also have Rosa writing from Rome. Welcome, Rosanna, sorry. Welcome. I don't think we've ever had a focus together.
Yeah.
So,
Could everyone maybe share their job so we have a bit of context as to what kind of business you're in?
exactly. Have you ever done a business webinar, Sean, or is this your first one?
I did one just yesterday and Marco was there as
Ah,
well.
cool.
But yeah, this is my second.
Nice. Yeah, guys. So let us know your job, what you do, and then we'll just kind of get started with our objectives for today. So we'll be focusing on telephoning skills, though this one it can also be pretty general. You can apply the same to meetings, complaints, etc., even in person. So let's see. Sean, can you read the three objectives that we have for today?
Sure. So today's objectives are discussing delicate issues, breaking news gently, and giving reassurance.
Exactly. Yeah, this is a nice expression there to break the news. I feel like this is usually used when you have something negative to tell. You have to break the news to someone. You have to inform them of something that you don't want to, but sometimes you just have to. How to do so gently, do so with tact. I know, Marco, you've been in a couple of the business activities that I did with Michelle, I think last week and the week before. And this is one thing we already kind of touched on a bit, was the fact that a big difference between, I think, business culture in Italy and in English speaking countries is that in Italy, there is a certain level of formality that people keep. But at the same time, you are a bit more direct, I think, you know? So you would use the lei, you would still be respectful, but you can be direct in the way you express your opinions, in the way that you communicate with people. Whereas for us, business communication can actually be quite informal. Um, there isn't a big difference in the way I would talk to, someone from work versus any other person that I don't know that well. But we do have to be really polite. We have to be really gentle in the way we approach things. Otherwise, you come across as rude or overly direct. And so these are skills that are always good to keep in mind as especially in business situations, because the stakes are high. You don't want to lose a client. You don't want to lose a deal because of the way you're maybe coming across.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. So Marco is a journalist specialized in cinema. Cool. And then Rosanna and Marco. Yeah, you guys are the business veterans then. Okay, guys. So let's get started here. So here we go. Let's talk about plain English. So Sean, do you want to read these questions here?
hmm In some situations, it can be hard to be considerate, yet clear and direct. What kind of situations require a good dose of tact? Does your approach depend more on the situation itself or the person you're speaking to?
Exactly. So let us know, guys. I guess tact is something that you do have in Italian, but if you have a good dose of tact, as is that you are choosing your words carefully, you're being aware of the implications of what you're going to say, and so if you have good tact, you are aware of that and you behave accordingly. Let's see. Maybe for us, Sean, as English teachers, do you think there are some situations that require a particularly good dose of tact?
Yes, one that comes straight to mind is when you have to fail someone in
Mm,
a checkpoint or
sure.
position. Because, I mean, I think some people can misunderstand these kind of things that you're being insincere or lying or being false. I think to be tactful is important so as not to discourage people, so as to, frame certain situations we've been taught to think of as negative in a more positive or neutral way because people have a lot of anxiety about failing or having to repeat things. So we have to really work to reframe that, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, exactly. And it can be really easy, I think, for people to focus on the results, because if you think about your schooling, our experience with learning, I think, is very much based on pass and fail. And I know that at MyS, we use a very different approach. We really focus on the person, in front of us as an individual, and we just try to think of what is the next best activity for them. So, after an activity like a revision or a checkpoint, I definitely agree. We are not thinking of like passing or failing or, yeah, like keeping you, punishing you, or anything like that. We're just thinking of what would be best for you. And but communicating that is not, we do have to be tactful. We do have to be careful with the way you word it, because otherwise you risk the person losing their motivation altogether. Maybe all the months of effort can easily be lost, if they feel like they're not progressing, or something like that. So yeah, that's definitely a good one. And do you think it depends more on the situation itself, or do you think it changes also depending on the person?
I mean, that's an interesting question. I think if you're close to someone, or sometimes if someone seems very, a very strong, very confident person, you feel like you can be more frank with them, more
Hmm.
honest with them. But I mean, certain situations, everyone is human. You require people to break certain news gently to you, regardless of the situation, I think.
Sure.
Do you have any thoughts?
No, I definitely agree, especially if you do want to grow. I think there is a fine line, between being, you want to be tactful, you want to be mindful of their reaction, but at the same time, you don't want to keep them, in a comfort zone always. So sometimes it is that honest, sometimes even brutal feedback. It can be good, at just pushing them to do better. So it's a difficult balance. It's not always easy. In some contexts, of course, more than others. So we have Marco here who's saying it depends on the person and on the situation, especially in a professional environment. You should be tactful with clients unless you're very confident. Yeah, good. And I think you touched on what Sean was just saying. Depends on how well you know them. Yeah. But clients, definitely. It's a tricky one. And Rosanna says, for example, in my job, I'm a marketing manager. So in this period, a sales phone call with a client needs a good dose of tact because the general situation isn't simple. People aren't enough open to do new investments. Oh, sure. Yeah, I think any kind of sales, any kind of contracts these days, it's just really difficult. Because, yeah, as you said, people are very unsure. Making investments can be quite risky. Yeah. Nice examples, guys. Thanks for the good contribution. So we're going to look at a specific case study, all right? And we're going to just see how this company could perhaps approach this issue in a tactful way. So here I can read the situation. So Luzzi Motors have been producing cars in Italy since the 1950s. Famous for luxury sports models, a recent economic downturn has hit the company hard. Walking a fine line, the board have made a decision to move production abroad in order to benefit from lower manufacturing costs. A move that's bound to be unpopular not only with employees, but also shareholders who see offshoring as a trade-off against quality.
Hmm.
All right, so let's maybe look at some vocab here before moving on, make sure everything is clear. So let us know also, Rosanna, Marco, anyone else watching us, if there are any specific pieces of vocabulary that you're confused by. But let's see, maybe an economic downturn, that can be good.
Mhm.
Like downturn. So that is, of course, if the economic has kind of turned, and it's falling. So I think the word, it's pretty evident there. But an economic downturn, it's a time in which you're not being successful. Things in general in the economy aren't good. So recent economic downturn has hit the company hard. I think it's something we're all seeing at the moment. Many companies are experiencing the effects of an economic downturn now. Um, bound to. Yes, Marco, kind of like a crisis. Yeah, an economic crisis. I would say a crisis, it would perhaps be something that has been sustained for longer. An economic downturn can be perhaps a bit shorter. Um, at least that's how I perceive it.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
necessarily as severe as a crisis, I don't think, just a downward trend.
Mm-hmm. And then maybe bound to can be good. If something is bound to, it's likely to.
Mhm.
Yeah, Marco, walking a fine line. That's when you are in a difficult situation. So see, you're walking a fine line. So your margin of errors is really, really small there because the risks are quite big. So, walking a fine line, the board, I guess I mean here, the board of directors, they have made a decision, right, to move production abroad. And we do have the word here for that, which is offshoring. And they're saying that this move is likely to be unpopular, not only with employees, but also with shareholders. So that's a good one, Sean. What's a shareholder?
So a shareholder is a person who owns stock in the company. So the stock exchange is where you buy and sell shares in a company, a percentage of the ownership of the company.
Exactly. Yeah, so shareholders are like more direct investors, not to be confused with a stakeholder. So we can say that a shareholder is an example of a stakeholder, but a stakeholder is more general. Stakeholder is anyone that can be affected by the decision of a company. So, for instance, if a company is maybe, imagine you have some kind of industry like a factory, they are polluting the environment. So even the population, the local community, they are a stakeholder. They're being affected by those actions. Okay. So obviously a shareholder, employees, the local community, those are all stakeholders. Anyone who has a stake in the company. So yes, I think that's Rosanna. That's what you're asking, right? So let me know if it's clear now. So stakeholder is anyone who can be affected by the actions of the company. And then offshoring, this is moving, so moving your production offshore, so abroad, somewhere else, to another country. Yes, Rosanna, I read your mind. I knew you were going to ask it. Great. Fantastic. Okay, so yeah, let us know, guys, if there are any other questions here. So, obviously, this is a delicate situation. I think especially when you consider the fact that Luzzi Motors is a luxury company. And so perhaps, people would really appreciate the whole made in Italy sort of, yeah, they produce cars in Italy, right? So if you change or switch your production elsewhere, even if, everything else is the same, you're still using the same materials, the same procedures, etc., it could be seen as kind of like a trade-off, as you see there, against quality. You're sacrificing quality as a result. So it can be really delicate. So how should the board announce their decision? And who should they announce it to? Is it the same to everyone? Should they approach it, with one group of people first? Is email best? A social media post? A meeting? A phone call? What do you think? Sean? Do you think there is an approach that, if you were in that position, you would take?
I think definitely not an email. Anything delicate, you have to present yourself in person. It gives an impression that you're trying to hide. I think if you send an email or a text or something where there's no direct response. I think certainly you should deal with the shareholders and stakeholders before announcing publicly, to kind of give them a sense that they have some power in the situation, that they can contribute, whether or not they can. Yeah, so just kind of a series of meetings, maybe, and then maybe a press conference or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, exactly. And I would say also of course, we have to consider the employees as well, because if you're offshoring, that would likely mean that the vast majority of your employees will lose their jobs. They will, be laid off. And so it's important also to communicate this, with plenty of time in advance, so they can also maybe look for other jobs. It wouldn't be fair to just, you know, give them the bare minimum of time. Say we're closing in a month, we're closing in 2 months. So give them as much notice as possible. And also, I think in a way that is respectful to them. So definitely not an email, a meeting, perhaps even individual meetings that, can be done with local managers, or, they probably have different teams. So yeah, these are certain considerations that I think the company should take. Yeah, I guess customers, their clients, is another potential tricky situation, because how do you ensure them that the quality is not going to go down as a result of that?
Mm-hmm.
So let's see here, some ideas. Marco says meetings with employees, especially if a part of the team is going to be fired, exactly, or moved to another department. A press conference for the media. And email and phone callings with shareholders. Okay, very good, Marcos. So we have different approaches there for different stakeholders. And Rosanna says, I think the board have to manage this announcement. So I would just say this announcement, because it's a noun, all right, Rosanna? Announce can be the verb. I'm just gonna write this down. With a meeting, firstly with all managers to share problems and solutions, and secondly with other people of the company and with the media. Yeah, nice approach there, guys. I think we all agree here then with the approach. So, so the CEO Giacomo Luzzi decides to bite the bullet. This is another good expression. So the bullet is, if you have a gun, the bullet is what comes out, right, of the gun. So if you bite the bullet, that's just something you don't want to do, right? It's really unpleasant to bite the bullet. But to bite the bullet is to do the thing you don't want to do. Okay, I don't want to communicate this to anyone. I know the reactions are going to be bad. I just have to bite the bullet. I have to do it. Okay. So, Sean, do you want to read just the situation here, and then we can each pick a character to read the conversation?
Okay, CEO Giacomo Luzzi has decided to break the news early to one of the more outspoken shareholders, Mr. Reed, in an attempt to avoid rumors and panic.
There you go. Yeah, that's also a good one. And even among your shareholders, you might have one or two characters that might cause trouble and might influence the others. And so it might be a good idea in this case to first talk to that person, try to kind of like calm the waters there before talking to everyone. Okay, let's see a couple other comments. I agree with Marco. It's important to prepare and establish a specific moment with media to explain the situation. Excellent. And here I would also put the, when we say media, just like internet, we always say the media, the internet. Okay. So, all right. So, Sean, do you want to be Mr. Luzzi? You'll be the CEO, and I will be Mr. Reed, one of the shareholders.
Sure. So, good morning, Mr. Reed. How's Panama treating you?
Morning, Mr. Luzzi. It's business as usual out here. I'm sorry we couldn't meet in person. Is it important? Are you calling to let me know you've canned the offshoring plan?
Not quite. Although we've been able to make cost savings while keeping the Italian sites in the past, it hasn't been possible this time round, despite our best
Okay,
efforts.
stop tiptoeing around the issue, Luzzi. Spit it out.
Mm. There's no easy way to tell you this, but the board have approved the offshoring project.
Are you serious? So we're leaving the luxury market then? Has this gone public yet?
There's nothing to worry about, Mr. Reed. We've considered the quality issue and
Exactly. Cool. All right, guys. So there are loads of phrases that we're going to be looking at here. In the beginning, we talked about breaking the news gently and kind of how to do so. So we'll be analyzing the text in just a second. Before we do so, let us know, as you did before, any vocabulary that you might be unsure of. In the meantime, we'll identify a few. Let's see. To can, that's a good one. I'm sure you use it as a modal, right? As in to communicate ability. I can drive a car, I can speak Italian, etc. But in this case, it's a bit different. Sean, what does it mean like this, to can the offshoring plan?
Yeah, to kind of dispose of or get rid of or reconsider in this case because it's a plan. I think it comes from the can as in the bin. So you put it in the can, you put it in the bin.
Exactly. Yeah, Rosanna, I think that's exactly what it is. Yeah, I think I've heard that before. And
Yeah,
exact, so can,
we have it in English to grab the bull by the
or go
horns.
by the horns. Exactly. Yeah. Cool. Um, anything else? Let's see. Although we've been able to make while keeping the past has been possible. Okay, maybe to tiptoe. The tiptoe, we can use that as a verb. So the toe is basically the finger, right, on your feet. And so the tip is the top. So to tiptoe, especially tiptoe around, is when you're not being direct. You're just tiptoeing around. You're being extra careful. And so Mr. Reed here, he can tell that Lucy is about to give him bad news, and he's trying to be gentle, he's trying to be careful, and he says, all right, stop tiptoeing around. So stop being overly cautious, just spit it out. So just tell me what it is. So to spit something out. So see, as you can see here, this is quite direct as well. So this kind of goes. We talked about the importance of being overly polite in English, etc. Now, in this case, of course, we have a shareholder. They probably have a very close relationship. And as you can tell, Mr. Reed is a more outspoken character than Lucy is. So we can also see the two different reactions, very different tones when they speak. So, all right, let's so tiptoe, to be overly cautious / not be too direct. Okay, and to spit it out, be direct, just tell me. Okay, there we go. Okay, I guess everything else is okay. Do you see anything there, Sean, that you think is worth maybe talking about, vocabulary wise?
Um, no, I think it's interesting that Mr. Luzzi is the one being delicate and Mr. Reed is being more direct. It's a bit of a role reversal of the way English and Italian people usually are.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because I think Mr. Luzzi here, he's being cautious because he doesn't want, he's afraid of Mr. Reed's reaction, right? Maybe he has a lot of influence with the other shareholders. I think he might, that's why he's being a bit extra cautious. Yeah, because the tone is very different. Two very different reactions here during in this conversation.
Yeah.
So, all right, guys. Well, any other vocabulary, let us know. We're going to keep looking at this interaction here. Now, does Mr. Luzzi break the news in a direct way? What does he say? So what do you think, Sean? Do you think Mr. Luzzi is direct in the way he breaks the news?
No, I don't think very direct, really. He's saying a lot, kind of framing the situation, giving a lot of more context around the action, saying, it wasn't possible this time around despite our best efforts, although we've been able to make cost savings in the past, kind of a bit, explaining the decision rather than just presenting it.
Yeah, exactly. So good, Rosanna, indirect. Marco has a good question here for us. So the difference between this time and this time around. Let me think for a second. That's in the conversation. Right? Let me see if I were to substitute it with this time, would it be the same? is that?
It hasn't been possible this time around. The second thing that Mr. Lutzi says.
I don't think there is a huge difference, but it sounds better with around, as in, it's almost like a filler, isn't it? Do you think it really changes the meaning that much, Sean?
No, I mean, often with these kind of differences, it just adds a sense of something or other. And I think round gives a sense of a repeated action, a relationship over time, a continuing situation. And this time does that as well, but this time could be one other time. Whereas this time round suggests time and time and time again. It suggests repetition. At least to me, that's what I
Yeah,
think.
no, that's a good one. So maybe, it kind of gives the idea, yeah, that they've already considered offshoring in the past, but then they were able, to avoid it. But this time around, they weren't. So maybe it emphasizes the fact that it happened in the past already, more so than this time. Although this time certainly does the same thing. It's just something you add. But yeah, it's just perhaps that's a bit more repetitive. But we do have quite a bit of these expressions in English. I would just add like a little filler, and it changes the meaning ever so slightly.
Yeah, I mean, don't worry about it too much, so long as you can understand it.
Cool. Yeah, and I think Sean, you mentioned some good, you gave some good examples of what Lutzi was using, some of the expressions that he was using to be gentle in his approach. Here we go. See, although we've been able to blah 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 in the past. So see, although, so you're kind of comparing the situation. See, we tried this before and it worked before, but unfortunately not now. Also, this is quite good. Despite our best efforts, there is no easy way to tell you this. Again, you're kind of anticipating the bad news, getting the person ready for it. And what does he say to reassure Mr. Reed? So the ones that are underlined there, they were good to prepare the person for the bad news. And then what does he say to make sure that everything will be okay, basically? We have a couple examples as well.
Yeah.
I guess we'll just give it to you guys because it takes a second for the comments, but it's towards the end here, right? There's nothing to worry about. We've considered the situation, and so these can be quite good. All right, guys. So if you have any questions, just write them to us on the comments. We're just going to move on here. Now, this can be good for maybe you guys to take a picture of. Usually when you do these businesses in school, you have the PDF that you can access afterwards. So you would have this in PDF form. But obviously with the webinar, you don't have access to the PDF. So maybe it can be a good idea to take a picture of the phrases for tiptoeing and the phrases for reassuring, as we're introducing a few more. So here, Sean, do you want to read the tiptoeing phrases and I'll read the reassuring phrases?
Sure. So, although we have been able to in the past, as you might have heard or guessed, I wish I could help you, but it would appear that there's no easy or nice way to say this. Despite our best efforts, you might want to sit down before you hear this.
That last one, I'm not too sure about.
I think maybe if you're a doctor giving bad news.
Yeah. Yeah, that would certainly make someone very anxious, I think. If anyone tells me you might want to sit down, I'm expecting something absolutely terrible. Okay, and then for reassuring, you'll be fine or it will be fine. Trust me, there is no need to worry or there is nothing to worry about. It'll turn out all right. It isn't as bad as it seems. Whatever you may have heard, or at least, So yeah, as you can see, none of these are extremely complex. See, that's a nice thing about business language in English. You don't necessarily need to learn super fancy vocabulary. They are still pretty much everyday vocab. It's just about being tactful. It's about being polite. So sometimes even just adding modals, as we can see, we have a few modals there: would, might. Those kind of they come up quite often. All right. So let's see if you guys can maybe use them, give your own examples. So here we have some ideas, okay? Imagine that you missed a deadline, you were not able to fix a problem, or you have to refuse dinner with a client, whatever it is. Okay, it can also be maybe if you want to make it more realistic, think about your own work and if there's something, a situation, delicate situation with a client or a colleague that due to the coronavirus emergency, you have to kind of break some bad news or the other. How would you do it? So take one of the tiptoeing phrases and one of the reassuring phrases and try to communicate that nicely. Try to break the news gently to your colleague, client, or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess for us, Sean, we this kind of during this time we have to break the news less so than we did before because we're not really doing any checkpoints or revisions, huh?
Yeah, I mean, I know it's not our role in my yes, but I think the consultants have maybe had to do a bit of, reassuring people that their contracts are not affected
Mhm.
and that keeping them updated that we're doing our best and trying to figure things out here and there, especially with technical problems sometimes, I think.
Yeah, exactly. I know an industry that has been in a lot of trouble is airlines during this time.
Mm,
I've actually been dealing with a lot of it because right in the beginning of March, I booked something like 7 or 8 flights in one day with different companies.
really?
Yeah, yeah, because I booked all these flights to go to Amsterdam, throughout the year, because that's where my partner lives, and so yes, I just booked a bunch of them,
Okay.
and
Have they
then
all
they're
been
like,
cancelled?
not all of them. It depends a bit on the airline, but it has been quite difficult. So I'm not gonna like say any names here, but one airline in particular, um, it's been really tricky because according to European regulations, if the airline cancels the flight, regardless of the reason, they need to give you the option of a refund.
Mm,
Okay. If it's something out of their control, which, because of the outbreak, it's definitely something they cannot control, you're not entitled to any kind of compensation, but you are entitled to the money that you paid them. Some
mm,
airlines, and we're not even talking low cost airlines, are not really following the directives. So basically, they're only giving people
mm.
the option to get a travel voucher.
Yeah.
But
I
at the same
mm,
time, they're raising their prices for the future, so you can get a voucher, but then you're not guaranteed to, fly the same route. You might have to pay a difference, and
mm.
they're not offering the possibility of a refund. And so a lot of people have been complaining about that.
Yeah, I guess they just have to kind of do something that may not be 100% ethical to ensure that their business survives, that people will fly again, and that they maybe will pay more for planes in the future to balance the whole
Yeah,
situation.
yeah, because I mean, what they're essentially doing is just forcing their customers to become lenders.
Mm,
They're just like keeping our money without giving us any guarantee that we'll get that money back, because if the company goes bankrupt, that's it. The money's gone.
yeah,
So I kind of really regret buying all those flights now. I mean, because it's a lot of money that is just, could potentially disappear. I don't think so. I mean, I mean, there's no
yeah,
way all airlines are going to go bankrupt, right? I
no.
hope. But
I mean, yeah, it's tricky. It's very tricky. But I think really people will want to travel. The industry will surely recover.
yeah, that's true. All right. Rosanna is sharing a real situation that happened this week at her job. So the new 11th March orders from clients were blocked for, you can even say due to a technical problem. So they arrived only yesterday, and now my team is completely scared and in panic because we are officially late with the deadline. All right, all right. So what could you say then, Rosanna? It's a really good situation. I mean, not a good situation, but it allows you to use the vocab well. So, how can you approach this? So, how can you communicate this delay? And you can certainly use, the coronavirus situation, the lockdown, to justify, to reassure, or explain why that is. Okay, so let us know. In the meantime, Marco has shared one with us. So there's no easy way to say this. Our kids are missing, oh gosh, from yesterday. It could be as bad as it seems. It will turn out all right. That's a hard one to reassure people on.
Super delicate.
Yeah, our kids are missing from yesterday. Yeah. Yeah, no, like, yeah, it could be as bad as it seems. Because here you cannot guarantee it's not as bad as it seems. Yeah, but you're being hopeful. You say it will turn out all right. Uh, Yeah, I guess
Yeah.
what you can even say maybe because it is difficult for you to be completely sure that it will turn out all right. So you can even say something like, I am confident that it could be as bad as it seems, or although it seems really bad, I am confident that it will turn out all right, or something like that.
Mm. Yeah, I think some situations are so bad that you just have to say it will be okay, even if there's no guarantee. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm kind of like thankful actually, because as a teacher, I feel like we don't have to deal with such like difficult, sensitive matters like that.
No, I mean, my sister, she's a speech therapist, so she works in healthcare. And she tends to, part of her job is diagnosing children with speech difficulties, and in particular, autism, she deals with a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So, she's half of her job is just dealing with the parents and their reactions and their feelings about it, which seems strange because it's not something she learned how to do in college. It's not really part of her profession, but it really dominates her job. And I think in business, dealing with people is such a much bigger part than numbers or anything like that, really.
Yeah, and also something that I don't know how much is stressed in business schools. To do
Mhm.
certainly spend a lot of time on the management part of it, but sometimes it's like speaking. It's something that even, I remember in high school we had some of it, but it's something that I wish I had learned to do as well more.
Yeah. It's a tough one to teach anyway. It's kind of,
It
it's just,
is. It really is. Yeah. There's some good, I guess, extracurricular activities that can really help with
mm,
this. But okay, let's see here. So tomorrow I've started with a meeting to manage the operations with my team, and my first phrase was keep calm, and it's not all. Maybe it's not as bad as it seems. Nice expression there. It's not as bad as it seems. My decision was to reassure. And Rosanna, did you receive? Have you received a reaction from them yet? You think that this approach, did it work? Was it effective?
I think a good idiom for this particular period is we're all in the same boat. I think we have to give each other more understanding and more space than usual because everyone is going through issues and difficulties at this time.
Yeah, exactly. Even sometimes like I think the phrase like during these challenging times, I because
Mm,
it is something that we can all relate to. So I think that's I wouldn't say it again, it's a positive thing of this, but it is something that, no one is exempt from it. We're all suffering, we're all struggling. And so I think clients, colleagues, managers, everyone is more understanding in general, or hopefully they are. So my decision is to reassure and encourage people to not fall in. You can even use panic as a verb if you want, Rosanna, and encourage people not to panic and simply communicate with clients to establish together a new deadline. Exactly. Yeah. And I think it just goes back to what Sean was just saying. It is a period that is difficult for everyone. So I'm sure clients will be more understanding as well. We're all trying new methods. We're kind of learning how to work from home and be efficient in doing so. I certainly know I feel like I've learned a lot from managing all these courses online. It's something that I, really didn't have to do before. I feel a lot more confident with the technology itself, with the approaches. I remember the first webinar I did. I was so nervous, like I'm
Oh
so used
yeah.
to just talking to people face to face and not being potentially watched by everyone. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, and it does pull from a different part of our skill set as teachers when you remove the people. It really makes you think about the language maybe more than you usually do. So I have
mhm.
appreciated that.
Yeah, definitely. And then the reaction. Oh, the reactions ever. We do have a similar. Yeah, in English, just spell it differently. Like just show relief and cool. All right, guys. So we're getting to the end of the webinar here. We do hope that this was useful with these expressions. Again, I really do encourage, if you haven't done so, to take a picture. Or, I mean, you can always go back. The video will be available on YouTube anytime you need it. And again, while this is a telephoning business, we can use all these expressions on email. So it doesn't only have to be over the phone. Uh, so quick review of everything we've done. So we talked about breaking the news, and this is something that you have to tell someone, a negative, some negative piece of news you have to say. And another expression we can use here is to bite the bullet. Something you don't want to do, but you have to. Some other vocab here. So an economic downturn. So it's when the trend, of the economy is falling. Um, to walk a fine line is to be in a delicate position. If your production is being moved abroad, we call this offshoring. Something that is bound to is something that is likely to. A shareholder is someone who owns stock for a certain company, but a stakeholder is anyone who can be affected by the decision of that company. Was there anything? A few things here, right? Oh yeah, to can is to get rid of, to cancel, to stop something. To tiptoe is to not be direct, to try to kind of go around, to, as we also say, to beat around the bush. And to spit it out is the opposite, is to be direct, say exactly what you mean. And then here you saw some other examples that you can use. All right. So thanks, guys, for all the comments, the participation, the good questions. Really good work from both of you.
Mhm. Yeah,
And that's it. All right.
yeah.
So we'll be back with more. Actually, I don't remember the businesses. If I guess they're not at every hour, are they? So certainly tomorrow at lunchtime there should be some business activities. But you guys probably know better than I do, since you are veterans. So we'll
Okay.
see you guys around. All right.
Yes. Have a great evening, everyone.
Bye bye, guys.